Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining my presentation. I am Grigorian. I will be talking to you about how to tell stories with data. I have been trying to do that for the last 10 years, it turns out, maybe more. When I first started, I was a business analyst at a tech company, and that was the first thing that my CMO asked me to do. He was like, go run some numbers in Salesforce and Marketo, and I need to be able to explain how we're doing. And it turns out that I've been kind of hooked on that problem since, and I have yet to come up with a good answer. But I'll share what I learned along the way. My personal journey has been that I've been both in-house roles, like the one I talked about. I've been a marketing operations manager, business operations manager. I then went to freelance. I used to host the Marketo user group in Denver, which was really fun. I got to know lots of people there. And as part of my consulting was always been about marketing analytics, which back in the day also had led me to start a whole company where we built a multi-touch attribution tool for Salesforce. And that company was pretty successful. We ended up selling it to Engagio. So then I went and I did a lot of work around account-based analytics. And then Engagio itself got acquired. And long story short, I'm back to consulting, back to the thing that I love doing, which is still marketing analytics. Turns out that we haven't made that much progress since then. And the thing that I've been focusing on the most recently is less about dashboard creation or managing the data, but more about how do we interpret the data? How do we tell stories from data? How do we communicate with our colleagues about what the data actually means? So today we're going to be covering that. So we're going to talk about what are data stories, why we are so bad at telling them. We're going to see some examples of data stories done well or not well. And we're going to talk about like, how do you what are the patterns of a good data story and how to make one. And so after this presentation, hopefully what you have are the tools to be able to go make your own data story. Sound good? Let's get started. So I found this very cool visualization of a data story that kind of explains what it is. I did not make this Lego thing, but it is very cool. It was a meme that was trending on LinkedIn, as it would be. And it kind of talks about this idea, right, of like data could be messy, it could be everywhere. And it's our job to be able to first kind of organize it. Maybe it's by color or by size, arrange it, visually present it, but even better, make something out of it. And there's a big difference, as you can see, between the first pile and the last one. Which would you rather have? I mean, right? That's what we're all trying to do. And the reason it appeals to us so much is that it turns out that our colleagues and our customers, the people who will actually look at the results of our analysis and of our work, are other human beings that used to be kids. They used to be, some are still kids at heart. And the best way to communicate with people is through stories. And what I found is that a lot of the dashboards and a lot of the analytical output of our work, they may be correct, but it's almost like we're trying to communicate with this like robot who's supposed to take our data, make an analytical decision, and go do something about it. But there's a lot more involved. I find that if you form it into a story and infuse it with meaning, it can compel the right emotion, it can make people feel comfortable, and they'll be able to easier tell other people the story. And we are a story consuming and telling beings, turns out. There's a lot of literature on this, and I'll share some of that later, but that's why we want to tell a data story, is because it is human friendly and it will spread more and it will be more likely to be acted upon than if you don't turn it into a story. Okay. ultimately, we want to be able to compel people to do something better. We want them to do their jobs better. We want them to do marketing that's more effective, to get more customers, to make the company more successful, to have a successful career. And that's why we're doing this whole thing in the first place. So why would you spend all this time doing the right thing with the data and then not do this one last bit that that would make it even better? Okay, so that's what we're doing. Let's talk about what we're doing today, right? This is what I've seen over and over again in the hundreds of marketing organizations I've worked with. Typically, if you're a data analyst or if there's a data team, this is the sort of thing that goes on. We go gather requirements from stakeholders. They tell us things we kind of already knew that they were going to tell us. We go get the data. We put it in a data warehouse, or maybe it's already somewhere like in your Salesforce or whatever. We pull it, we run reports and dashboards, and we then say, hey, remember you asked me for this dashboard? Here it is. Here's the report. I'll see you on Monday. And that's pretty much how that goes. What's the result? The result is this: the glorious output of hundreds of thousands of hours of digital work. Okay, it's beautiful. There's colors, there's charts, there's numbers everywhere, there's pick lists and checkboxes, and it works for a lot of people. I will admit, like, there are groups of people who are data literate, who are sophisticated and comfortable with all the different data that is being presented to them, and are able to make use of this somehow. Okay, but in my opinion and in my experience, a lot of your team members actually, when they're presented with an overwhelm of information like this, recoil and wish that they were somewhere else in that moment. And it is a very painful experience to try to read some of these charts to make sure that they're accurate and to be able to derive meaning from them. And one of the most deflating questions that I often get after presenting a dashboard to the team is that, Grant, it sounds like you did a lot of work. This dashboard looks fantastic. The colors are coordinated. It's symmetrical. So what are we supposed to do now? Should we do more of this type of advertising? Should we send more emails? What are we doing? Tell me, right? Terrible. It's a terrible experience because it means that you didn't actually do your job all the way, okay? And the problem is that there are different kind of, the problem is that you are the person who's closest to the data, right? You are the person who's looked at the data, who's organized it. You're the one playing with the Legos, right? And so what we're often doing is not actually going all the way and taking the responsibility for deriving the meaning from the data. I remember I was working with a CMO, and I would come with these spreadsheets and with these dashboards to her, and she would look at me like I was, like I was crazy, and she would say, Grant, just tell me what the highlights are. I'm about to go to this executive meeting or to the board meeting. Just what am I supposed to say? Like, if I had the whole, afternoon on a Saturday, I could probably figure out what all these spreadsheets and all these charts mean, but I don't have that time, right? I don't have the ability or the time to analyze all of this. Just give me the highlight, give me the story. And so depending on who your audience is, they may be more or less able to both understand and have the time to analyze the data. So thinking about your audience here is very important. So those dashboards, maybe they're great for other MOPS people or other, hands-on directors, marketing owners. But as you move up the seniority level, they may be more of a waste of time. And so that's something to think about. So How many of you have you had this? Let's play out a scenario together, okay? Maybe you've heard this. I mean, I hear this every week. Maybe somebody slacks you or teams you or whatever the thing is. They're like, hey, you work in MOPS. Grant, can you get me a report of number of ops created this quarter? And you're like, no problem. That's my job. I got you. Okay. 5 minutes later, here you go. Here's the report. Oh, great. Thank you, Grant. Now, can you get me that data by region, lead source, and rep? Can you break it down for me? No problem, right? That's what I'm here for, boss. 20 minutes later, here you go. Got it. Okay. Excellent work, Grant. Now, I want you to go get me a report of campaigns created last quarter and number of responses for each one. Okay. Can you do that? Yep, sure thing. Here's the report. Have you guys, does it sound familiar? I've done that. I've done that. It's such a common trap to fall into because this will never end. You will forever be the robot that returns just data and answers, completely shirking your responsibility. In this case, to try to figure out what is your manager worried about? What business problem are they trying to solve? Why are they asking you for all of this data? Okay. What's missing there is kind of two steps. One is some sort of analysis or judgment. So it's you. You are a smart, capable human being with a very sophisticated brain, right? You've spent the time playing with the Legos. What is your judgment? What is your analysis of that data set? Add it, right? That's why you're there. That's why they employed you. That's why you're the consultant or whatever your role is in messing with this data set. And then it's also your responsibility to present it in a way that's palatable, that's inviting to your audience. Okay, so you can't just vomit a spreadsheet at them. That's not fair. They don't deserve that, right? They need it presented in a easy to consume, easy to understand language. Then you share it with them. That's called a data story. Okay, that's what we're doing. Here's what it looks like. I'll just show you a few examples, so it's not doesn't sound so mysterious. Okay, here's an example of a data kind of a presentation, data story. So what do we see there? It's got some key trends and insights. Notice there is some bullet points with text. Okay, there's a chart. There's a couple of charts with some highlights on the second one. And then there's a section for recommendations. Okay, let's look at another example. This is coming in from Slack. This is actually a real life example I pulled and redacted, right? Because we're for privacy from an actual client. This is a marketing analyst posting in Slack. This week's analysis of some campaigns. And we've got insights, recommendations, and business impact. There is no charts in here. There is no data, just kind of text and highlights. Okay. She says that there is some high bounce rate. There's some problems. She's got recommendations. And then she says, if we do this, it will add 10K to the pipeline. Wow. That's great. Okay. Here's another example. Again, we see some charts, some highlights, but also real insights, actions, and impact kind of sections with text. Here's one that yours truly made at some point about email performance. I was looking at Marketo reports, and I posted this example of like, hey, this is how much you need email. We sent like, 300,000 emails. That's a lot, right? And I said, here are the best ones. Here are the worst ones, depending on whatever. And if you want to look at some details yourself, click here. These are all examples of data stories. What do they have in common? A lot more text. So these are, I almost think of them as like tweets, right? It turns out that we don't like to read long things, but we don't want to do the work of understanding either. So I think a tweet size is about right. Like it's bite-sized. It's got bullet points, probably slides. Think MBA instead of a coder, okay, or instead of a novelist. Like you're doing a presentation for business, so it's in slides form. There's visual aids that kind of reinforce your bullet points. Recently, I've been obsessed with like, can we animate this thing? Can we show how something is changing over time? That would be cool, right? Why aren't there animations in MOPS? Somebody should make one. Or a little movie, right? Maybe you can make a little movie that shows campaign ROI. People would watch that. They would like that. That's where I'm headed with this. This is one of my favorite writers on this topic. His name is Avinash Kaushik. He's a data evangelist at Google. He has a really great blog and a newsletter. If you guys want to check it out, just Google his name. And I'll just read it. It says, never leave data interpretation to the executives. Let them opine on your recommendations for actions with benefit of their wisdom and awareness of business strategy. The idea is oftentimes we hold back and we say, well, those executives, they know the secrets. They know what the things are, right? We don't know the context. We don't know what's happening. How can I possibly recommend things? And they're thinking the opposite. They're like, this guy knows all the data. Why doesn't he tell me what the data is saying, right? And so the idea is just say it. Just say what you think, and then you can have a conversation about your recommendations. But if you don't say anything, there's nothing to talk about. There is no insights from data at all. Okay. Let's try this again. Okay, let's try that interaction one more time. Hey, can you get me a report of a number of ops created this quarter, says your boss? What do you say after learning all that I just shared? You say, oh, interesting that you ask, like, what's going on? Are you like prepping for something? What's on your mind? Tell me more. Thanks for asking. I want to go in prepared to answer questions about whether we're on track to hit our pipeline this quarter. Your manager is worried about hitting pipeline. Man, right? I see, you say. Let me put together some slides for you with links to data as backup. You know how to put together a slideshow that talks about pipeline. He doesn't have to explain to you all the different reports and data sets to pull, right? You're going to do the right thing. You're going to put together a report, a package for your manager, and then send it to him, knowing what they're worried about. Sounds great. Look forward to reviewing it together. So then you send it along. Here you go. Let's hop on a call, and I'll guide you through the slides. And what are you going to give them? You're going to give them talking points. You're going to give them the things to say at the executive meeting that makes it sound like they know what they're talking about, that they have the numbers to back it up. Oh, it looks like we're 82% there, or whatever it is. You know, ads in EMEA are slowing down this quarter. We should do X, Y, and Z as a result. So much better. Now you're a trusted business advisor. You're not simply a report robot. Okay? Way better for your career, way better for your manager, way more exciting for you. So the conversation, right, becomes action driven. You are telling them, you're kind of almost on the same level with them, right? Instead of being driven by these like very directed. Actually, those directed questions that say, pull this report, pull this report, pull this report, are very ineffective because, again, they don't know the data set like you do, right? So you're just going to be wasting a ton of time. It's going to go on forever, and it's it's a waste of everybody's time. And that's what you want to be, your strategic partner instead of a data robot. There's actually a term called Data Monkey. You can go search that, and there's all sorts of stories on the internet about that. So let's talk about the data stories themselves and how to put them together. Okay. What's in a good package that you're going to send to the manager? What's a good data story? Okay. Well, any story kind of follows this arc. We learned about this, right? When we were writing essays in school. We've got some like setup. We've got something going on. We want our story to be interesting. That's another thing that I've learned, is that there is some action involved. Those are the best stories, the stories that people remember and that will spread, right? So there is some sort of a crisis, there is some tension, and then there's some sort of a resolution. And so I'd like to break it down in 3 acts, okay? Situation, complication, resolution. Ready? Here's an example, okay? Well, this is a common thing. People are measuring funnel metrics, okay? Like, we have some leads. Are they turning into opportunities? Our MQL to SQL conversion rate is 3%. That's fact, right? You ran some numbers. This is how we're converting. The conflict is, it turns out that what it should have been is 5% or 6%. And so therefore, we are behind. The conflict is that it's less than what it should be. And that, that begs the question of like, oh my God, are we not going to hit our sales numbers? Who's in trouble? Why is it behind? Right? What can we do to fix this? And all of that. That's a simple story, right? I would say 90% of the time, what I see is just act 1. People are just presenting act 1 and leaving it there. The manager in their mind is thinking about act 2 and act 3. But you're not providing it the whole way. So I kind of categorized it in terms of what it means. So act 1 is some sort of an insight. It's some sort of a metric. Act 2, you're judging it by comparison. Usually these metrics mean something if you know the context. Is this a good number or is this a bad number? And then act 3 is like, what should we do? What's the impact of this being true? Okay. So usually this insight and judgment is not just a repetition of what the data says. It's some sort of an idea that says like in the example before, 3, but actually when we made the plan for the year, we wanted this number by now to be 5. Therefore, we're 2 off. And by the way, this is probably why, because our expectations were wrong in this area. What should we do? We should double down. We should wait. We should stop doing X and start doing Y. And then the final one that I often see missed entirely, that I call impact, is you say, if the manager follows the recommendation, what would the impact be? So if we were able to bring that number back up to 5, it would increase our expected pipeline by X, or it would, increase engagement by Y. Those are the ingredients that anyone would need to have a kind of a conversation about what should we do and what would be the impact of doing something or not doing it at all. So these are the elements of a good data story. Here's more examples, right? Maybe you did some analysis about channel performance in marketing, and so you found that conferences are the worst performing channels based on some metric. Okay, why? Why is that? Maybe go talk to the marketer. Say, hey, I noticed the conferences kind of suck. No, what's going on? Can we explain this? Oh, well, it's because we went to the wrong one, or all the wrong people showed. It was just the students or whatever, right? Explain why. Recommendation: stop doing them. Don't do it. Do more web stuff. Less conference stuff, more web stuff. And if we had spent that $26,000 that we went to the conference for, in web ads or whatever it is that we could have spent it on the web resources channel, we would have generated 67,000 more dollars. You could actually do the math just by multiplying things out. Take it all the way, because in the mental model of a lot of your decision makers, this is basically what they're doing. They're taking money from different buckets, multiplying it out by the effectiveness of other buckets and seeing if that will generate more money in the end. Okay. So let's do an example. I like to do an example with just like simple email metrics. Least sexy metrics you could find, right? Turns out these days especially, there's a lot of bots, and who knows how trustworthy these metrics really are, but we can still tell stories about them, and it's a good exercise to go through. So step one, we're going to go and fetch email data, right? And this is the sort of thing that you would get here: the email sent, how many emails were sent, percent delivered, opened, and so on and so forth. Really low unsubscribe rate. These excellent emails here. Right away, I actually said really low unsubscribe rate. Compared to what? Low? Based on what? How would I know, right? Is 0.1 low, or is 1 low, or is 10% low? Who knows? I brought my experience and judged this number already, but maybe for this company, this is normal. Maybe this is just the way things are, and maybe it's not low at all. Maybe it's average. So right away, what I usually think about is, what are we comparing this against? Always have something to compare against. You could compare against the past, historical, right? So what's the average delivery, open, click, unsubscribe rates for emails? You could compare it against industry benchmarks. You could go to the internet, lots of reports about what the averages are from HubSpot. There's a really great report from folks at NAC that comes out that does this. Maybe your team has expectations. You could ask them, be like, hey, I want to be able to like judge these numbers through your eyes. This is something I noticed, like a lot of times if you're working with like a media marketer, like a marketer who does a lot of advertising, and I would show them numbers, and I would immediately start judging it. They're like, oh, this is great, this sucks, this is, and I'm like, why? Tell me what's in your head. Let's write it down so that in the future I could judge this table the same way you are. So I can just do this work for you. And oftentimes teams have goals. Maybe it was developed based on historicals or based on some expectations. And so these are all good things to compare actual numbers to. And then you could, if you wanted to, you could even have a little scale that says, like, is this as good as the thing that I expect? Is it worse? Is it better? Right? Should somebody be getting a promotion or not? So if we apply the Act 1, 2, and 3 idea here, we've got Act 1, metrics, boom, here they are. Act 2, they're judged instantly, right? In the little gray is what they should be. I know it's fake data. I didn't actually go through the exercise of putting in the actual ranges, but there is some expected range you could put in. Is a click should be somewhere between, 5 and 8, or whatever it is. Open should be between this and this. And then they're colored. And so immediately, even just with this, I can kind of now scan it and say, oh, you can kind of squint. You don't even just see the numbers. You can just squint and see, oh, we have more green this week, or yellows, or what's happening, right? And immediately draws your eye towards the goods and the bads. Okay. And in Act 3, which is exactly how this was made, is you start to summarize. You start to say, oh, let me take all the reds or all the blues and kind of group them together. Also, okay, so the first email, the click was bad. And the third email, oh, kind of a high on subscribe. Okay. So instead of forcing my team to scan it themselves, you scan it. You pick out what's good. You pick out what's bad and summarize it. And then in Act 3, for the ones that worked well, let's say, or for the ones that were really bad, go all the way. Maybe you send them a thing that says, hey, this email performed really well. Here's what it looks like. Here was the subject line of it. Here's like who it was sent to, right? And maybe you have a little tweet in that little box in the middle. Put in your opinion of why you think, oh, the yellow buttons really came through this week, right? Next time, for sure, let's add yellow buttons. Or whatever it is, surely there is something to say about this email. And you don't have to do this yourself either. Maybe your role could be just assembling this, synthesizing it, saying, these are the top 3 or top 5 emails. Here's everything about them. And then you go to your email team and you say, guys, these did really well. Why do you think it did well? What can we derive from here as a learning for everyone? And let's write that down and then publish it as a data story. Wouldn't that be cool? How cool would it be to leave a trail of these recommendations and reviews for your team to be able to use? Next time they're writing an email, they could pick this up and read it and say, oh, these are the things that worked in the past. These are the things that were successful, right? That's what we want. And by the way, you could do this with anything. Funnel data, deal data, ABM data, whatever campaign data. The pattern is the same. We've got the metrics. We've got the things to compare them against. We've got the judgment table, the reds and the greens and the oranges, right? Is it good? Is it bad? How do we know? Compared to what? The past? Because of what the boss expects? Because of the team goals? So show me the best parts. Give me the highlights. Give me the worst parts. Tell me why. Tell me what's happening. And so you can kind of see it goes from raw data to synthesis, comparison analysis, to then synthesis of just the highlights and the lowlights with some sort of causal factors and recommendations as a result. You guys see it? You guys see the pattern? I hope you do, because I don't think it's that revolutionary. We should be all doing this, but it's just hard. I know it's hard. So how do you make it easier? How do you actually put this into place? So first of all, planning ahead and setting that expectation for yourself that you are going to go the full way. Sometimes this is called the last mile of analytics. So, you know what I mean? It's the mile that you have to go through to get into other human beings' brains. Make it easy to understand. Don't just throw analytics at them. So number 1, planning ahead. What does that mean? You got to do the homework. You got to figure out what the benchmarks are. You got to have these expectations and goals set up so that as real data comes in, you have something to compare it against. Number 3, having some templates helps. Like I showed that email thing, have some idea of like, this is what the end result is going to look like. Remember that example with the manager and the pipeline thing? Maybe having an idea of like, what would that look like, right? What would a pipeline review at the end of the quarter report looks like? Pre-created. Just make up numbers. Say, hey, this will be actuals. This will be our expectations. This is the delta. And this is what we're going to talk about as a result. Have them for all the flavors, right? We've got email stories, ad campaigns, something about the funnel, campaign attribution, whatever it is. And then maybe there's a calendar. Maybe they don't even have to Slack you. You Slack them, right? Turn the tables. Give them, say, hey, you have a meeting coming up. Here's the thing you need to know about, here's the talking points for the meeting. You're welcome. You don't have to ask me. I got you. I already did the work for you. A successful calendar that I've seen has these different types of analysis. Maybe by depth or by kind of strategic importance. There's kind of weekly stories. Maybe it's about emails or more tactical things. There's monthly things that you could be doing with your team. And then there's kind of quarterly look backs and, model assumption reviews. And are the goals themselves accurate? Maybe we're like way ahead of the goals, so we need to make the goals more whatever it is. There's different types of things, surely, that you could talk about on a weekly, monthly, or quarterly basis. Man, that was a lot. I hope that made sense. I hope I was coherent. But I'm hoping that this framework will be helpful to you guys. It certainly has been to me over the last years that I've been doing marketing analytics. I've really shifted in the way I do work by really focusing and thinking about what is the human being who's, stressed out and has, all these work pressures on themselves. What would they want to receive from me, someone who's looking at their data? And so I've been thinking a lot about data stories. I'd love to hear from you. Have you guys been able to come up with great data stories? How do you present your data? How do you synthesize and visualize it so that your team understands? Or maybe your team is so sophisticated that they can just look at dashboards and just make sense of everything on their own. I'd love to. How did you do that? I'd love to hear from you guys. And if you have any questions, I'll answer them now. Thanks. All right. All right, you guys. Questions? What do you think? Let me know. Earlier, somebody was talking about what do I got to do to prevent others from making up their own stories? Good one. Good questions. I think I covered that during the presentation in a sense that, we're in a political season, right? And there's a lot of work being done on both sides on political parties to shape the story. And I think there's lessons to be learned there about what is the story that people are talking about and who's going to shape it. And I don't want to get into the office politics, but data interpretation can be political. And so to the extent that you just present data and charts and leave the story to be interpreted by somebody else, who knows what they'll say, right? They could come up with all sorts of interpretations that are not true. And so yet again, even more reason to come up with your own stories and go all the way, the talking points and all that. Okay, other questions. Another question is like about data. I always get this question about data quality. Like, what do you do if the data is messy? And I guess it's about the Legos. Maybe the Legos just don't fit together. What do you do then? Well, I would say that there is always something you could put together, like an outline, with where you can kind of put the parameters to say, we don't know exactly what this looks like, but it's roughly, the shape is looking like this. Directionally, the data is pointing here. And I think this is what it means. So even if your data is not perfect, nobody's data is perfect. And in your stories, I've seen people put like little disclaimers, kind of like, even when we're judging it, that's why I use ranges when I judge. I don't say, oh, our goal is 100 and we got to 90. I don't like having a single number goal because numbers are shifty, real world is statistically accurate. And so I like to give myself a little bit of a range. So if I land somewhere close to the number, it's good. It's as if we got there.
It doesn't work with sales and quota and your bookings numbers, but it does work for marketing. We have to just get kind of close. And maybe as you get good, that range can shrink. And as the messier the data, that range within which your how accurate your predictions and your recommendations are is at first wide when you have messy data, and as you gain more and more confidence, maybe you can shrink and become more and more precise. I think that's how I would think about it. So everything still applies. You're just painting with a broad brush instead of with precision. All right. Let's see if there are any other questions. Can you share the templates? Yes, I would love to share templates. That would be a good thing to do. So I'm still working on the templates themselves. It's a continuous work in progress, but I would be happy to share them. I'll put them up on my website, or I'll share them in the MOPS Slack community. Whatever works. I'd love to share the templates. There is it'll probably be like an Excel thing and like a slides thing as an example for the different types. That could be good. Maybe some Slack content templates, right? With emojis. Yes? All right. Yes. Slack. That's next level. That would be the most fashionable thing to do. Slack template sharing. All right. Okay, other questions. How do you decide the best stories to share? Our monthly marketing deck is now stretching over 60 slides. Ooh, 60 slides. Man, are they all important? Those 60 slides? To whom? Maybe I would go like this. Who is this for? Right? Maybe the problem is there's too many audiences. Maybe you need to break it up. Maybe instead of one, it's like, think of that micro communication idea, like Twitter, right? It's not like a long thing. It's like many small things. Maybe instead of a monthly big thing, it's like it's spread up throughout the month, or maybe it goes to different people. Maybe there is stuff about my region that goes to people who need to know. I would think about how to break it up, because I don't think people are looking at the 60 thing. What would be okay, I would be okay with you adding the 60 slides as an appendix to 2 or 3 slides that you put together. You look at the 60 slides. Why are you? That's your job, right? That's why we hired you, Kathy, right? That's why you're there. You look at the 60 slides, come up with something interesting from them, right? Highlight, the slide 34 is interesting, and so is whatever. Give me an executive summary. That's your story. And then the 60 slides is an appendix for anyone else who wants to go through it and figure it out. Didn't mean to pick on you, Kathy, but I think that's what I would, there's always a way to synthesize, to consolidate, or maybe in your case to break it up, maybe by context. Okay. Other questions, you guys? Can you talk more about your ideas for animation? Thank you, Lexi. Yes. The reason I'm excited about animation is because a lot of work that I do is in B2B. And you know how B2B is hard because things take time, right? Time is what animation is made out of, right? So like things happen over time. I'd love to be able to show that. That's one of the hardest things to convey. Like you can show it. How is this chart changing over time? Maybe there's like a little, I feel like charts, even in Salesforce, should have like a play button and like a reverse back in time button. What did this chart look like last month? And then click play and have the bars like change. That would be cool, because a lot of times that's what we're asking about, is like, how do we become better? How did it change over time? Especially like funnel data. I want to see like stuff going down the funnel or going back up the funnel or whatever it is. It would be, I think we would be able to communicate it more effectively What if it was a Jiffy into Slack, right? A little animated chart into Slack as a Jiffy. Am I saying it right? Jiffy? Just kidding. Other questions. What more tips do you have on speed? We have so many reports. When you add the synthesis and storytelling, we just can't do it. It just takes too long. Is that what you're saying, Wade? I mean, that's why we don't do it, really. This is, in my opinion, the number one reason I haven't always done it, right? It's not like we're just, I think what happens is because there's so much, I guess I would ask, like, how did we get here? Why is it that you have so many, reports to do for the month that you don't have time to actually analyze it and look at it? I feel like we're already starting on the wrong foot there. So rather than thinking about like, how do we take what we're already doing with reporting and all that, and then synthesizing on top of that, and I have to work weekends, Grant? Are you asking me to work weekends? You're saying it takes 3 weeks after the month's end. So just the speed to action, like the thing happened, and then we got to run reports, and then we got to do the stories, and then by the time we're done, it's time to do the next month. Yeah, I hear you. Well, this should be automated. It should be templatized. It should be more standardized. I think it's okay. The way I think about it in my head is, I want some stories to be one-offs. I want them to be where you're making something new. You're talking to your team and you're like, hey, this sort of data or this sort of story we haven't done before. Let's figure this out. It's going to take longer and it's going to be more custom made for this month, right? But next month, because we took the time to do it this month, it's going to be quicker because we're just going to do the same thing. We're just going to plug in the numbers and have it come out looking like the thing that we just designed. And then you take care of that piece of it. And then I want you to systematically go through the reports and just automate the ones that are consistent month over month. And the ones that are not, the ones that you need to be creative or, the one-offs, that's where you spend your time. But I mean, like, are they really that custom? Do they really change that much every month? Or are they basically the same thing? It's just the work of getting the data. And if it's all about the piping, man, we have so much technology and technical know-how on how to take numbers and automate production of something. I would think about how to do that. Aiden, Jiffy, yeah. Well, okay. It's a GIF. All right. Any other questions? Let's see. What else do I have? Dave says, find it helpful to consistently go back to the questions I'm trying to answer. In doing this, I find that reports I previously thought of were important tend to drop off the list. Yeah, you're right. It's kind of an iterative process. I also found this to be true as I started putting more, this like practice of trying to go as far as I can with the report, short of actually taking the actions in my recommendations. I find that it's been changing over time, like the way I recommend and the way I think about it. Because I think if you start at the end and then look back and see what you need to do in order to get there, oftentimes you get in a different place than if you just follow kind of the common way of doing just reporting and presenting the metrics. All right. One common thing that I wanted to talk about that I think I did, but I wanted to, oftentimes what stops us from going further is a little bit of fear. I would say, professional fear that we're going to get it wrong. It's easier to hide behind the numbers, especially because a lot of people attracted to data analyst roles and to MOPS, maybe more in general, are more comfortable with more technical things, maybe. Some of us are. And so it's comforting and easy to just to not cross that line into actual marketing or actual, having a book of business. And so we just say, well, here are the numbers, and I'll see you later. I'm a technical person. And so a lot of the things that I've been thinking about recently are about the psychology of that. How do you overcome that? How do you see yourself as a valuable contributor to the team? How do you convince yourself that you know just as much as anyone, and that your opinion also matters, and that your team wants to hear it? How do you create a culture like that on your team? Do you think your team members are, maybe if you're a manager of a MOPS team, how do you ensure that all of the individual contributors feel comfortable sharing their business insights, right? How do we make safe spaces for that? That's something that I'm interested in. If you guys have any ideas, I'd love to hear it. There are so many metrics, but how would you identify important KPIs? I bet your manager knows what the important KPIs are. It's usually about money. That's my experience. It's usually about pipeline. All roads lead to that. So I would start there. And in marketing, it's often the leading indicators of pipeline. So those become the most important things. Anytime you can help someone proactively correct a course, you're on the right track, I think. What if there are other teams responsible for data reporting? How can we best encourage these teams to get better at storytelling? That's a really good question. Send them this presentation, dude. Just forward it. My templates that I'm going to post later, send them those. That's actually, that's really good. I don't know what the answer to that is. If there is another team and they're just pumping out dashboards and they're not doing the actual work, somebody else is for sure. There's some executive out there who is doing the work. I guess, why are you asking? You wanna be on the receiving end? If your responsibility is to receive data, maybe that's the way we should frame it. Is the way you encourage it is you should expect it. You should tell them, what is it? Remember that scenario that I talked about where I was all awkwarded out when people asked me, what then? What am I supposed to do? Make them feel that, okay? Make them feel awkward. Be like, so what am I supposed to do with these numbers? Well, you think I have all Saturday to review this and come up with solutions? No, I'm going to my son's soccer game. You tell me the highlights, okay? Maybe a little bit of that. Yes, Justin, that's right. Psychological safety is important in setting the culture of sharing. And that, it's not your fault, right? You're the messenger. You are looking at the data and you're earnestly trying to come up with business solutions that the data is telling you. And so psychological safety, encouragement, and expectation that this is the way that we're going to run things. We're not just going to send numbers. We're going to send recommendations. And if you're an agency or if you work at an agency, I think this is even more powerful, because what kind of an agency do you want to be, right? Think about the value that you're providing to your clients in terms of analytics and the meaning behind them. Okay. Any other thoughts, questions? Anybody know of anybody who's doing a good job of this? I'd love to hear it. If you have examples of great data stories that you've created, or that you know of somebody else who's creating some great either data visualizations or is consistently super helpful with analytics, I'd love to hear it. I'll share it in the same place as as my own templates and resources. Okay, we've got Michelle asking a question. Do you have any favorite questions to dig deeper into more broad requests? For example, a request for a weekly report showing funnel health to identify any red flags. Favorite questions to dig deeper. Yes. These are good interview questions. Just think of how would you, I would do it like this. If somebody gives you broad something like that, there's both an opportunity and a risk. If somebody asked me that specific thing and they said, Grant, like, I have so many opinions about what a funnel health thing is that I have a really strong opinion about what you should be looking at. But if it was somebody I wasn't, if somebody asked me that, I would want to make sure that we're on the same page. Is their expectation of what they're about to see same as what I'm about to give them, right? And so maybe what I would do is I would try to design a template together and be like, and I would do the first version yourself. One of the common mistakes that I see analysts making is asking people what they want on a dashboard or what they want in a template. That's a recipe for disaster, because they'll say like a ton of things that you already knew what they were going to say. So what I would do is I would make the first version. So to dig deeper, I would come up with V1. Say, even without having the actual data, just make your funnel stages and put the conversion rates in there, assuming that you're going to get some. Put some, other things that you think would be important to showing funnel health. And maybe it's like a little scorecard. It's like a slide or two or something. And maybe it has like bullet points for top things to worry about for funnel or something like that. And then show it to them and say, hey, I was thinking something like this. And if they agree, great. Otherwise, you have something to work off of. So make a V1, take the first step, and see if you can come together on it. Make sense? Awesome. Well, you guys know where to reach me, and hope to hear from you. And I'll post all the secrets whenever I get a chance on the MOPS community and on my own website. So talk to you guys later.